The country saying the new tariff rates will apply to about $75 billion worth of U.S. goods, saying the rates will be from 5 to 10%. And this is from Reuters, just crossing a couple of moments
ago. Do you
ever
think that there's not some machine trading even before the... So that was 8:00:56 on the first alert, 8:01:16, 8:01:37, and 8:01:56.
You got to have a fast finger.
Yeah, you got to be really, really fast. So literally, I was looking up and reading that, and it happened. Those flashes were hitting right then.
And you have to imagine...
But you do this, but you had to expect this was going to happen.
We heard it earlier.
That's why I don't understand why the market is
The Global
moving on
Times
this.
editor this morning kind of foretold that this was coming.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping tweeted it about around 6 a.m.
We mentioned that.
Coming.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But here's my point. $75 billion worth of U.S. goods is not a major amount. What the market's really looking at here
is the longer fight.
Well, that's kind of in the back.
But you had to imagine this was going to happen. Forget about what we thought was going to happen 2 hours ago. I'm saying you had to imagine this was going to happen 2 months ago.
Well, they could have done different kinds of responses, right? They could have said it's rare earths. They could have,
Yeah, it's iPhone. I mean, the thing is that's in the back of Trump's mind. They're going to run out of things long before we run out of things to put tariffs on, because we don't. That's part of the problem. They get, that's why the trade deficit is what it is.
Totally, but they probably think it doesn't go unanswered by the U.S., even if they're answering our opening volley.
I want to get to Eamon Javers, who's in Washington right now, to get his reaction to these new comments from China on the tariffs and what may be a real escalation here, Eamon, of where this is all headed.
Yeah, and you guys are just talking about this question of whether or not the Chinese can respond with tariffs against the U.S. tariffs, because given that the Chinese don't import as much from us as we import from them. And that's always been the concern in this trade war, is that would bleed into another non-tariff response. So far, what we're seeing from these headlines this morning is a tariff response from China. And we got a little bit of a precursor to that. Take a look at this tweet you guys were just mentioning. This is from the editor of the Global Times, Hu Zijin, who is well-connected. It's a state-run newspaper, well-connected with the Chinese government. Earlier this morning, he said, based on what I know, China will take further countermeasures in response to U.S. tariffs on 300 billion Chinese goods. Beijing will soon unveil a plan of imposing retaliatory tariffs on certain U.S. products. China has ammunition to fight back. The U.S. side will feel the pain. So that's sort of the Chinese government attitude reflected through this newspaper editor that just before we saw these wire flashes cross about the new Chinese tariffs. Last night, though, I talked to Larry Kudlow in the White House driveway, and Larry Kudlow, as of last night, the National Economic Council director at the White House, still confident that the Chinese side were going to be negotiating in September. Here's what he said last night.
We are still planning for the Chinese team to come over here in September. I don't want to name a date or anything, but we're waiting. So the deputy's call is quite constructive, and this may lead to a meeting of the principals here in Washington, D.C.
So Larry Kudlow there suggesting that talks are still on for September. Now we see this retaliation this morning. The question will be for the White House this morning whether that means talks are on or off. All of that going to be overshadowing the G7 over the weekend. The president meeting with advanced democratic leaders in France, in Biarritz, over the weekend. China not invited to the G7, of course, not a member of the G7. The leaders there, you see, of the advanced Western democracies will be taking part. The president of France has invited a number of other countries to sit in on the G7 this weekend, but China not there, even though it's going to dominate the headlines, guys.